What's up, guys? If you're suffering from an NFL hangover,
The Patriots!
You're not the only one. So we're going to give you the fantasy impact of all those injuries that just went down on Sunday. Plus, we got a lot to talk about in baseball. We're going to help you get your lineup set tonight. How's that sound, Jessie?
Yeah, whatever. The sweat.
Just take the sweat. Hey, everybody. If it looks like Jessie is half-assing things today, it's because she is. But yours truly cannot be more dialed in. It's a Monday edition of The Sweat, which you could probably tell by now.
I mean, I wrote this entire show, so let's bring
That's
in a
right,
trio
she did.
of hardworking dudes who never take days off. Jeff Ulrich, Reed Fowler, and Ryan Noonan of the Quant Edge.
Let's put a fantasy spin on some of the top NFL stories from the weekend, starting with the news of Jimmy G in San Francisco, guys. Out for the year after tearing his ACL. So what's this injury mean for the fantasy value of everyone else on San Francisco's offense? What do you think, Jeff?
Well, first of all, pour one out for Jimmy G and his incredible jawline, beautiful hairline.
Yeah, he's absolutely perfect.
Look, I think this is going to turn possibly Matt Breda into a PPR star. If you look back at CJ Beathard, what he did last year, 36 of his passes went to the running back position. That included Carlos Hyde, Kyle Juszczyk, and Breda. So I think Breda is going to gobble up a few more passes here. Marquise Goodwin really could take a dive here. Only caught a few passes. Is going to be turned, into my opinion, an extreme boomer bust candidate. He just does not have the down the field passing ability that a guy like Garoppolo did. Garoppolo basically turned Goodwin into a star when he came to San Francisco last year. So I'd really look for Breda to take possibly a step up in the PPR department. Kittle could go either way. I think Kittle might be fine, but Goodwin, I don't like the outlook personally.
Hey, Reed, what do you think here? Because Beathard played in 6 games in 2017 here. He completed only 54% of his passes, threw more interceptions than touchdowns. Yeah. So how costly is this going to be for everyone else in the 49ers offense?
Well, Jeff hit the nail on the head. All the skill players that we've either drafted in season long or that we were looking at some exposure right in DFS are probably going to take a hit. But Breda does. His production or his value buoys probably to the plus side because of what Jeff is saying. This guy is a check down Charlie. That's what he does. If you look at Goodwin, we're going to kind of see what happened to T.Y. Hilton. Now, Goodwin never really had a T.Y. Hilton-esque career where he had top 10 production, but that's where he was headed to. So if you look at C.J. Beathard and you see, well, what games did he do well in? It was against the failing Giants last year, right there in a world of hurt. But he did target Goodwin 11 times one game. Granted, that's not going to be the case. Pierre Garçon is essentially going to be a wide receiver 4 or 5 at best, and so it does hurt some of these receivers. Kittle's production is probably going to stay the same. The average depth of target is probably going to be a lot less. But yeah, it definitely hurts, but Breda's production is probably going to stay the same.
Hey, Ryan, both Reed and Jeff seem to think Breda is going to see an increase in value here. Do you agree, and is there anyone else in this offense who could possibly see an increase?
Yeah, and to echo the sentiment of the guys for sure. I think it is an uptick for Breda, especially in our PPR game here at DraftKings. Otherwise, it's basically a fantasy Siberia for the rest of them. I mean, it's a massive hit to the volume. George Kittle, we do have this shower narrative here. They played together in college, so maybe there's something there. We saw a decent amount of, you never know, right?
Yeah, hey, good to see you again.
He's playing a ton of snaps, so he'll continue to stay on the field. Jeff mentioned Marquise Goodwin. If you use our tool over at the Quant Edge, we saw the Marquise Goodwin had a 24.2% target share with Jimmy G under center. That number falls to 14.5 with Garoppolo out of the lineup. That is a massive hit to his value. Really, the thing that we forget about is the sustainability of the offense. Success rates will drop. They'll be on the field for fewer plays. So even though Breda might see an uptick, just overall the offense as a whole is going to take a dip. So massive hit for the Niners as a whole.
Guys, the Falcons lose safety Ricardo Allen for the season. The third significant injury on defense. Is Atlanta going to be a team to stack against moving forward, Reed?
Yeah, absolutely. And if you look at Atlanta's offense as well, you could use them kind of what we saw with New Orleans, right, a couple years ago, where their defense was so bad that you could really play both sides of the ball. But really the pass-catching running backs, we've seen McCaffrey, Kamara, these are the top guys. But these guys are seeing upwards of 12 to 14 targets per game. Like in the last 2 games, Atlanta's given up 970, it's almost 1,000 yards, total yards to opposing offenses. And so you see opposing quarterbacks, too, averaging about 28 DK fantasy points. And so when you get a guy like Gio coming in next week, you should be in a good spot. But Atlanta's offense as well should also have to keep up, because that defense, you might see Earl Thomas, right? There's trade rumors that Earl Thomas might go there. Eric Reed is still out there in terms of getting some production back in that secondary. But yeah, you can play both sides on both sides of the ball in terms of offenses with Atlanta and the opposing offense.
Jeff, when you look at this, how do you feel it's going to affect Atlanta moving forward?
Well, look, Atlanta's already been terrible in a couple spots before this injury. And I mean, their production that they're allowing to the running backs right now is kind of historic. They've always been bad protecting like the RB receptions under Dan Quinn. But this year it's been ridiculous. I mean, I think they've allowed now like 25, almost 30 passes to the running back position over their last 2 games. I mean, Christian McCaffrey and Alvin Kamara has just destroyed this defense just from simple checkdowns in the slot, slants, whatever you want to call it. But I think the loss of Allen is just going to accentuate that. I think the tight end position might be a good spot to target here now. And I think running backs, especially ones that have the pass catching ability against them, are just going to be huge targets. So it's definitely looking like a spot to target. They still have solid corners. I'll throw that out. It's not necessarily like a guarantee your wide receiver ones are going to do good well against them. But yeah, those running backs, it only makes me want to target them more.
Yeah, Ryan, when you look at this, you thinking you're going to start stacking against Atlanta?
Yeah, bringing it back to, Reed made a good call too, because this obviously has a trickle-down effect to that offense as well. They've been just terrible. 42.9% of their opponents' drives have ended in a score. It's the 4th highest rate in the league so far. And their opponents have converted 48.5% of their third downs. They just can't get off the field. I mean, that's the 2nd worst rate in the league through 3 weeks. The guys mentioned what's happened in the last 2 weeks with Christian McCaffrey and Alvin Kamara. 29 catches on 35 targets. Gio Bernard had 100% of the targets or the touches last week for Cincy. So he's just a lock button play, I think, in cash games on DraftKings this week at full PPR. He's a must play.
All right, well, we've also got Zeke Elliott taking blame for Dallas's loss yesterday. A few crucial mistakes on his part, but a 2-part question here for you, Ryan. From a fantasy perspective, isn't he the only Cowboy providing any sort of upside right now? Had more than 100 yards rushing yesterday against the Seahawks. And who else on Dallas can draw any interest here?
Nobody. I mean, we could just wrap up the segment. I mean, he's it. The knock on Zeke coming in has been his lack of passing game work. But I think that's been more about the ineptitude of the coaching staff than his skill set. This season, though, he actually leads the team in targets with 18, which is really abysmal. I mean, Adam Thielen had 19 alone yesterday. The wide receivers getting all the buzz in the preseason. Allen Hurns, they drafted Michael Gallup. They've combined for 16 targets in the first 3 games. So Dak hasn't been good either. He's 29th in adjusted yards per attempt. Has not really flashed the rushing upside that we've seen from him in the past either. It's just a really abysmal offense. They play slow. They just grind it down to 3 seconds of the play clock every time it's snapping the ball. I want really nothing to do with any of them.
Yeah, Dak has yet to throw for more than 170 yards in a stinking game this year. Reed, anyone else on Dallas here? Can they draw any kind of fantasy interest? Anyone else with value besides Zeke?
I mean, who's the number 1 receiver? It could be Tavon Austin, who's not really a receiver. It could be Cole Beasley.
It's not Allen Hurns, that's for sure. Right?
It's not Allen Hurns, right? I mean, he wasn't even good enough to be a QB1 in Jacksonville. You're Duval, Jacksonville Jaguar. So you look at this team and you look at what Ryan was saying in terms of Dak's production. Like QB 28, 25, 21. QB 28, 21, 25 in his last 3 starts. Like that's not very good, right? And I don't think he's thrown over 200 yards 9 of his last 11 games. So when you look at what he can do from a fantasy or what the receivers can even do, it really rests not only on Zeke's production, but look at that offensive line. Now you have a defense without Sean Lee on the other side. Teams are going to run against them. They're going to slow the clock down. There's not going to be a lot of production, a lot of plays on Dallas's offensive side. And if they're down, who are you going to go to? So yes, he's the only option, Zeke is, and no, there really is nowhere else to go.
They disrespected Tony Romo for this. Mm-hmm. Ridiculous.
Jeff, if you don't have Zeke, man, like, are you touching anyone on this offense?
I mean, look, I'll play a little bit of devil's advocate here. I mean, we haven't seen rushing upside from Dak yet, but we know it's there. He's one of the best running quarterbacks in the league. And look, I mean, the matchup against Seattle wasn't good. I mean, it was on the road in Seattle. Seattle's kind of a pace-down team as well. So, they played Carolina week 1, which, again, not really the ideal matchup. If you get a pace-up matchup with this team, and maybe against a team like Atlanta, who we just talked about, I think Dak might come into play, and you're going to get him at bargain bin prices going forward. So it would take that kind of matchup with an Atlanta or New Orleans to get me interested in Dak, but I think the upside is there. We just haven't quite seen it. Now, as far as receivers go, I'm probably not touching that. That's a little bit far. One other thing I'd throw out about Dallas, their defense is second in sacks. So maybe they didn't pay off for people last week, but there's still some a unit to keep an eye on. I know Sean Lee's out, but again, it's a pretty good defensive unit, to be honest. And at home, they might be in play some weeks.
Good job playing devil's advocate, man.
Yeah, we love the devil. Love the devil around here. Now, there's this. Kerryon Johnson becoming the first Lions 100-yard rusher in 5 years.
Wow, congratulations.
So sign of good things to come or more of a one-week fluke, Jeff?
It's look, I don't want to say it's a fluke, but look, let's look at it in context. It was the Sunday night game, so everyone saw Kerryon Johnson have this big 100-yard performance. He's still in a three-way time split. Theo Riddick is still going to catch a bunch of passes. LeGarrette Blount is still going to take some goal line carries. So, yeah, it's probably like the peak we're going to see him. He's not coming in. He's not going to be like Lev Bell and take 99% of the snaps all of a sudden. So keep that in mind. He's a solid player. I don't think he rates out as like an elite back, but he's okay. He's getting snaps. I think it was smart by Matt Patricia to give him more of the workload, but I don't think you're going to see him turn into an elite back this year. I think he's stuck in a three-way time split. I think that's as good as you're going to see from him. If I was in a season long, I'd probably be looking to trade him off this performance, to be honest.
Yeah, Reed, he was on the field for 33 offensive snaps, which was 7 more than LeGarrette Blount. So do we think we're going to see more of this type of production out of him?
I think you have to look at this game, like Jeff was saying, in a couple different ways. Look, I mean, you have Matt Patricia, who probably knows the Patriots' defense or Belichick's scheme as good as anyone, right? So was this a soft spot in a really bad Patriots defense right now where Kerryon Johnson can hit the century mark? You see him at 44%, Riddick still at 28% of the snaps, and like you're mentioning, Blunt still at 35%. In a lot of ways, this could be like a poor man's Patriots backfield where you have 3 or 4 guys. Amir Abdullah is still on the roster, for God's sake. So, I mean, when you talk about the lead guy, what does that mean? Does that mean he gets 45 to 50% of the snaps? Maybe. I will say this, if they do want to do this, I would say after the week 6 or week 7 bye, if they get a couple weeks with this guy under center or behind center as a lead guy, and they see that, hey, we're actually winning games and this is way more productive, you could see that bump up a little bit, but it's not going to be where he's getting 89% of the shares. So it's difficult, but I wouldn't say right now.
Ryan, I mean, the Lions beating the Patriots. Do we think Kerryon Johnson was a big part of that? Are we going to see more of this from him?
I'm bullish on it being something of a sign of things to come because of the skill set, but just to hammer home the point that the guy said, I mean, I hate this part of our game that we really need to root on an injury for a guy to be viable, but that's essentially what we would need to happen in our game for him to be a player from week to week. He and Blunt split touches 45% last week. The one thing I would say, just from a team standpoint, they traded up into the second round to trade for this guy. They took him ahead of some prospects that we thought heading into the draft that were going to be, a Darius Geis, for instance, someone who's injured with the Redskins, but everyone had him higher as a prospect to Kerryon Johnson. So there's obviously something that they saw here. They invested some draft equity on this player. So if he does start to emerge, he does have the skill set to handle passing game work as well. So again, if one of those injuries happen, he's going to be someone that we can lean on. But from week to week standpoint, I think he's going to be hard to trust.
Alrighty, guys, we see all of your questions coming out on Facebook for tonight's showdown between the Steelers and the Bucs. The guys are going to answer those coming up in this show. You three hang tight, please, because we will see which quarterbacks you expect to take a step back in week 4. But first, we're playing some MLB double play right after this.
I'm Brendan Glasheen with your DraftKings Fantasy Flash. The 49ers' worst fear has come true. ESPN's Adam Schefter reports Jimmy Garoppolo tore his ACL on Sunday. His 2018 season is over. Garoppolo's left knee buckled as he hurried for the sideline. He got hit on a 3rd and goal in the second half against the Chiefs. So San Fran's franchise quarterback has to hang him up and look forward to 2019. Jimmy G signed a 5-year, $126 million contract back in February. He's 26 years old. Not an ideal situation for his age, but not the end of the world for the Niners. Their fantasy value, on the other hand, may crash and burn. George Kittle, he's emerged as one of the top tight ends in the NFL. That's great, but his matchup this week against the Chargers isn't. He's 4,200, fourth amongst tight ends on the Week 4 main slate. Too much with no Garoppolo. And Marquise Goodwin, wide receiver, he flashed on Sunday, reeling in his first touchdown of the season. His connection with Jimmy G opened eyes last year. How will Goodwin fare now with Garoppolo out? Are you willing to pay up $4,800 this week? I'm not so sure. CJ Beathard is now the man under center. In summary, the Garoppolo injury downgrades every Niners skill position player going forward.
All right, well, baseball makes me feel funny, so let's get right to that with my dude Adam Mancuda of Phantom Sports and Greg Potty Mouth Ehrenberg.
Good to see you guys. Time for MLB Double Play, choosing between the top two options at the following positions. Adam, two pitchers coming off 30-plus point performances and priced within $200 of each other. Who you like tonight, Steven Strasburg or Jameson Taillon?
I think that if we were playing in a yearly league, Taillon's someone that I would absolutely prefer to Strasburg just because he's younger, a little healthier. But for tonight and tonight only, give me Strasburg against the Marlins. Much easier matchup for Strasburg, and during his career, he's been sensational against the Marlins. 17-7, ERA just over 3, WHIP right around 1.11, and more strikeouts to innings pitched. This season as well, Strasburg's been dominant against the Marlins. 2 starts, 5 innings in one, 6 innings in the other, only 2 earned runs and 19 strikeouts. He's going to face a much weaker hitting opponent tonight, so give me Strasburg, who also has the upside of potentially getting that win, while the Cubs are going to be fighting still for that division crown, going against Taillon and the Pirates.
Greg, Strasburg and the Marlins, or Taillon at Cubs, who you taking?
Well, first off, I love the nickname. I think I'm happy to be known for something.
It fits you well, my friend. It fits you well.
We like it.
So, I mean, yeah, I can't really add too much on to what Adam said because I think he really covered it, but it has to be Strasburg here. It's such an easier matchup. He's at home against the Marlins. The Marlins have been one of the worst teams in baseball this year, and they just don't have anything to play for at this point, whereas Taillon's on the road playing in Chicago against a team that's fighting for the division right now. So this is pretty easily just a layup for me towards Strasburg. Maybe if I wanted to add a little bit more content to this, I think it's maybe a tougher discussion if we're going to say Kluber or Strasburg. I would lean Kluber. Would you feel the same way, Adam?
Actually, I would probably still go with Strasburg because, again, the Indians have nothing to play for really tonight. They've already kind of locked up their postseason. Is Kluber going to go a full 5, 6, 7 innings? Probably not. He might pitch a few innings tonight, a few innings over the weekend, get ready for the postseason. So, for me, I think Strasburg's the better bet to go longer into the game. So, for me, he would be the play either way.
All right, well, how about the only 2 third basemen priced north of $5K? That's Jose Ramirez or Nolan Arenado. Gregory?
Well, I might have ruined this segment a little bit because I had originally said Jose Ramirez, so I can't see the graphic that's playing, but there's probably a Jose Ramirez graphic playing as I'm talking. But Jose Ramirez isn't in the lineup tonight, so we're only picking between 2 guys, and I kind of have to go Nolan Arenado because he's playing.
That makes a lot of sense.
All right, so let me ask you this then. Arenado, just an average of 4 fantasy points per game in 2 meetings with the Phillies this season. Does that concern you at all, Adam?
Yeah, I think that there are safer options tonight at third base. There are certainly those out there. But if we're just going to talk, let's mythically talk about the fact that Ramirez was playing tonight. To me, my concern would have been having him play that full 9 innings just like Kluber. So for me, Arenado's still in play here. I think he's still a good value. I know he's hit 50 points lower than he did in the first half. But again, they're fighting for their playoff lives. He's going to try to put on another MVP performance. And, a hitter at Coors Field always has bonanza potential. So I'd certainly pay up for a guy like Arenado with some of the other value on the board tonight.
Greg, is there someone else in the price range of Arenado who you like, or would you prefer to pay down for someone?
Not really a third base. I think for Arenado, there is a lot of value available. So like talking about the Indians, with them not having a ton to play for, they have a bunch of super cheap guys in the lineup, like Greg Allen's leading off. So there's so much value available that I think it makes sense to go up to Arenado and some of the other expensive Rockies bats and then use some of the cheap Indians guys as salary savings.
So with Jose Ramirez then sitting, I believe it's only the 5th time he has sat a game this year.
Wow.
Yeah, dude's been raking, man.
All right, guys, just a couple of these players coming off monster games. Mookie Betts, your highest priced outfielder at $5,900, and Christian Yelich, who's $200 cheaper. Ooh. Who are you going to roster, Adam?
I'm actually going to go with Betts here. Yelich is a little banged up. I haven't seen the lineup. I'm assuming he will play tonight as they're fighting for their playoff lives. And as much as I think he's going to be the NL MVP this season, I think it's got to be Betts. Look at his statistics career against Dylan Bundy: 3 homers, 6 RBIs. In the last 2 games Betts has actually played in, he's taken some days off, 8 for 11, 5 runs, 2 homers, 6 RBIs. The guy's making a case for himself as the AL MVP, so give me bets tonight, as I know he's in the lineup facing Bundy and that terrible Orioles pitching staff.
Can confirm Yelich is in the lineup.
There you go.
So, Greg, who are you going with here?
Yeah, Yelich is batting second, but I'm going to go with Mookie Betts here. It's just a much easier matchup for Betts. Yelich is going up against Flaherty, who's one of the better young pitchers in the National League, 3.08 ERA this year. We look at Betts going up against Dylan Bundy, who not only has Bundy been terrible this year, but he's been worse since the All-Star break. He's an ERA over 5 for the year, but it's 7.13 since the All-Star break. Mookie Betts has a really strong history against the Orioles. I don't know what it is against the team, except they could never seem to figure out how to get him out. There was a game last year where I think he had 3 home runs in a game, and then he had 7 home runs in a 4-game series against them. So Mookie Betts, I think, is a really strong play against Dylan Bundy tonight.
All right, well, both of you are a really strong play when you join this show, so we would like to do Tears of Joy with you two in just a few moments. And we've got some NBA talk. ADP rankings is the topic of conversation, but first, Pat Mayo is going to give us a look at some waiver wire options at wide receiver for Week 4.
Brennan Marshall, Chris Godwin, Christian Kirk. I'm really not feeling it after Jamison Crowder, to tell you the truth.
Oh, I am on Kirk. Just because.
You are?
Yeah. What was that?
You are feeling it on Kirk?
Yeah. I like Christian Kirk because Christian Kirk is the second best wide receiver on that team. The biggest issue we had is we saw them kind of call this in the beginning of preseason and training camp was that he was going to be behind Larry Fitzgerald. And then later on in the preseason, when we got to the end, they're like, oh, well, he might be able to start outside, which he can. He's more than just a slot receiver. He's actually very similar to Larry Fitzgerald. Great person to learn from, and maybe that's why they wanted it. And then we got to the beginning of the season, they're like, never mind, he's behind Larry Fitzgerald again. Well, it's starting to transition over the last week. And now you have Rosen at quarterback, which, as we all know, it's not a guarantee. It can be a myth. It can be the old wives' tale. But more often than not, who you practice with is who you're going to have a better rapport with when you come in. If you watch, Josh Rosen looked good for a couple passes there. He found Christian Kirk. He had some rapport with him and knowing where the cut was coming. I think that if you look at that type of situation, you could see Rosen gives this offense a boost, and Larry Fitzgerald and Christian Kirk get a little bit of a boost. I would take Christian Kirk. Honestly, I might be tempted for ceiling because that's what you always go for. I'd be tempted ceiling-wise to take him over Crowder because even with yesterday's game, Alex Smith and that offense is not throwing a lot, and he's not connecting with a lot of people. And that was the first game he even got more than 2 targets to Jamison Crowder, and it was only 5, I think. He caught 4 or 5 yesterday.
Yeah, he caught 4. I think it was 4 for 42 and a touchdown. So Christian Kirk, Christian Kirk, you would have over Jamison Crowder. Would you put him over Geronimo?
If I'm going for ceiling,
would you put him over Geronimo Allison?
No, because as much as I hate to have the third wide receiver over a second, it is the third wide receiver for Aaron Rodgers.
All right, so I'll put him ahead of Jamison Crowder. You talked me into that one. How much do we think that Christian Kirk's target share yesterday was predicated on Larry Fitzgerald just gimping around with his hamstring problem?
I don't think it was as much that as I'd say that factored in a little bit, but I think it was, well, let me put it this way, and this is going to sound like I'm straddling the fence. It factored in yesterday if they were only using him as much as they did because Larry Fitzgerald was gimpy. If they're not, and they're going to go back to what they did at the beginning of the preseason when they said, you know what, let's see what he can do outside because he can handle playing outside and not only the slot, then it doesn't matter at all. So it really comes down to, are they going to use him outside or are they going to force him to only be in 3 wide receiver sets?
Would you burn your number 1 waiver priority on any of these guys?
If I need wide receiver help, I'd go after the top 4.
You would use a number 1 waiver priority on each of them?
If I need wide receiver help, like if I'm hurting, if my third option has just been miserable so far this season, I've been playing mix and match and just haven't been able to hit, I would, because it's the third week. Everybody tries to hold on to that number 1 spot for a running back, and they're like, oh, who's going to pop up? And well, at this point, we're already seeing Chase Edmonds owned if David Johnson was going to go down. So now who are you going for? You're going to go pick up Wayne Gallman or Jonathan Stewart? I think that's what it is. Everybody's holding on to this lottery ticket. And so far through 3 weeks, it hasn't even been useful so far. So if you need help, I'd rather get yourself help to get you a win this week, especially now buys are already here. Then I'd rather do that than try to wait another 4 weeks and hopefully get some running back that may never happen.
We're talking basketball. with Karin Phillips of the New York Daily News and Action Matt LaMarca hailing from the Action Network, which you can peep right now on Android and iPhone.
We also didn't plan that at all. Like, it literally, I'm not
it's
joking.
natural,
we both
guys.
Just did
We're
it.
both
Couldn't
super
tell,
weird.
guys. Couldn't
Yeah,
tell.
we're really weird.
Listen, y'all spend way too much time together.
We
okay?
know, Karin. Like, tell us about it.
Yeah,
All right.
Should
Wait.
talk to our
It's
producers.
getting scary at this point. I'm a little concerned.
I am too. Trust me. I think a lot of people in our lives are. Now, playing NBA high or low, point guard edition. Are the following ADP rankings too high, too low, or just right? And these are the next level guys after the clear-cut favorites like Westbrook, Curry, like we're trying to go off the grid here. So, Karin, how do you feel about an ADP of 11 for Damian Lillard?
It's a little too high for me personally, and I understand there may be some backlash around my answer, given that he was a all NBA guy last season. But if you're thinking of like an 11 with an ADP, you're basically saying that Damian Lillard is like maybe the 11th best player in the league, which I just can't give him that. So that's a little bit too high for me.
So where would you take him?
Maybe 14, 15, 16, around that level, because I love Dame, and I know Dame is winning, and Dame is a great player, but Dame also led a team that lost to Drew Holiday and the New Orleans Pelicans in the playoffs, and I just can't get that out of my mind. This guy has a history of being clutch. But last season was a really good year for the Trailblazers to go to another level, and we all had high expectations for them. And to see them get bounced like that, for him to get outplayed by another point guard and Drew Holiday, like 11 is just too high for me.
Action, Matt. Great lamp you have in the background there. What are you doing?
Oh, there's two.
Yeah, wow, two lamps. So Damian Lillard, ADP of 11. What do you think?
I have to respectfully disagree here. I think that 11 is actually a really strong price to pay for Lillard. I would consider taking him earlier than that. You have to remember that in seasonal fantasy basketball, it's a little different than daily fantasy basketball. You're typically trying to build a team that is strong across the board in a variety of categories, and Lillard is a guy that can do that for you. He was above average in virtually every category across the board last season. The only one that he really hurts you is with his field goal percentage. But he's going to give you elite production in threes. He's going to give you a ton of points, and he was actually the most valuable contributor from the free throw line last season. He shot 91.6% on 7.4 attempts per game. So that's a lot of volume at the line and obviously a really, really elite percentage. If you're playing in a league that penalizes for turnovers, I would give Lillard even another boost. He averaged just 2.8 turnovers per game last season, and that's pretty low for a point guard who has the ball in his hands as much as Lillard does. So I really like him. He finished 7th on the player rater last season. The only point guard player that was above him was James Harden. So I think that it's a really nice spot to buy Lillard.
Karin, why'd you look so surprised there?
Just some of those numbers. Like I wasn't aware of the advanced metric stats on them because I don't really think those really play too much in basketball. It's more of a nuanced sport. But it does go with why I thought people wouldn't agree with my Lillard take. But still, like 11, that's basically saying he's the 11th best player in the league. And
yeah, I wouldn't agree with that, but you don't get points for on-ball defense and setting screens in fantasy basketball. You want guys who are going to give you assists and give you buckets, and Lillard's one of the best in the league at that.
All right, so
he is. I just think there's some more guys that are a little better than him.
Okay.
I love this, guys. This is great. I love when you two hate each other. Action Matt, John Wall coming in with an ADP of 16. Thoughts on that?
Yeah, this is a sell for me. This is too high. He's going to give you excellent assist production, but that's really all you can count on from him. He's a 10 assist a game type of guy for sure, but he's going to give you no threes. He's below average at the free throw line for a point guard, and he doesn't shoot the ball well from the field. So all of those kind of lead me to go in another direction at point guard. You could probably use him if you're trying to build like an assist-heavy team, maybe punt one or two categories, but yeah, I think Wall at 16 is too high for me.
Too high for you as well, Karin? He's got Dwight Howard as a teammate now.
And from reports, I think he's going to show up to camp like injured as always.
Oh, man.
I agree. Like 16 is a little too high. Like if this was like 18, I would be all in. And just for those things like John Wall, of course, there's going to be like some freak injury that happens because it seems to always happen with him every year. And then there's going to be like some playoff letdown as always. But his assist numbers are always high. He's always going to get you buckets. It's just sometimes there are some nights where John Wall, you're just totally blown away. And then 2 games later, you're scratching your head and you're going to be like, why did I even draft this guy on my team? But that's just kind of how John Wall has been at moments in the NBA. So 16 is a little too high. Feels a couple, maybe 18 and 19, I'll be all in.
Hey,
The
Matt.
fact that his teammates hate him too probably doesn't help either.
That also is important.
Hey, Matt, by the way, Karin's thinking 18, 19. What are you thinking?
I would go even lower than that, maybe like 22 to 24.
Okay.
Wow.
All right, sounds good.
Finally,
Low
guys,
Goodness, fight words.
Kyrie Irving on an ADP of 18. Too high, too low, or just right, Karin?
Way, way, way too low. People forget that before this guy got injured last season, he was an MVP candidate.
Yep.
Given that at the first game of the year, we thought the Celtics were done after the Gordon Hayward injury. Coming back off injury this year, we know the Celtics are loaded. We know they're at Hayward. We know Tatum's a rock star and how this all going to mesh. But that team isn't the second seed in the East last year without Kyrie Irving. I think he's one of the best players in the league. I think he's overlooked. He might not be 1 or 2 in terms of point guard behind like a Curry or a Westbrook, but this is the deepest position in professional sports that I believe point guard in the NBA. This is way, way too low for Kyrie Irving.
Action Matt, Kyrie Irving, 18. What do you think?
I agree with everything Karan said about him being one of the best players in the league. Like, I love Kyrie Irving. That dude could play for my team any day of the week. But I think from a fantasy perspective, his ADP is about right here. He finished 26th last season on the player rater. That was only in 60 games. So I think that 18 is probably about right for him. He doesn't score as much as you think he does. He averages 24 points a game last year. And we know that assists are not his strong suit. He was only at around 5. This team is adding Gordon Hayward back into the offense, who I think his best role is sort of serving as a ball handler, distributor type. I just think that the Celtics team is, too talented and too balanced for Kyrie to have that, massive usage type of season that he would need to for him to make this ADP a bargain. So I think that, in real life, Kyrie Irving, definitely one of the best players in the league and would be a value if you could get him, in the 18th spot. But in a fantasy draft, I think it's about right.
Yeah, big media day around the NBA today, and the starting 5 of the Celtics looks legit.
Looks really good.
Guys. All right, that'll do,
healthy.
gentlemen. We're talking NFL hangovers and Jessie's after Adam Levitan delivers the goods with Who'd I Miss On?
Hey everybody, I'm Brendan Glasheen for DK Live. This is Who'd I Miss On with Adam Levitan, Week 3 edition. Be sure to check out Levy on DK Live and the DraftKings Playbook. Levitan recaps a few of his misses from Sunday, some guys he flat out missed, some guys he was simply too high on, like Latavius Murray, who was Dalvin Cook's backup. He tallied just 8.1 fantasy points. What went wrong with this pick, Levy?
Yeah, we know the concerns with Latavius Murray. He doesn't play that well in the pass game. We know backups Mike Boone and Rock Thomas are somewhat talented, but it was just such a pristine matchup for Latavius Murray home in a game against this Bills team, which should have no prayer against the Vikings. Of course, Josh Allen comes in, the Buffalo defense comes in and absolutely dominates the Vikings. That just left Latavius on the sideline for far, far, far too long in this game.
All right, next, a big miss. Alabama rookie Calvin Ridley explodes against the Saints. 3 touchdowns, north of 140 yards receiving. How do we explain this one?
Yeah, my favorite wide receiver play under 4K this week was certainly Tyler Boyd, who performed well. I was not on Calvin Ridley, mostly because I thought that from a talent perspective, he just was not there yet. And Mohamed Sanu would still play a ton, and Julio Jones would still see such a large target share. In hindsight, Calvin Ridley is becoming a bigger and bigger part of this offense. And with Marshawn Lattimore shadowing Julio Jones, it made sense for Calvin Ridley to have a big game at a really cheap cost.
And last one, you were too high on Eric Ebron, the Colts tight end, with Jack Doyle out. You thought he had a high floor. What went wrong here?
Yeah, I don't have a lot of regrets about Eric Ebron. We did see a big role change for him with Jack Doyle out with that hip injury. Eric Ebron played on almost every snap. Eric Ebron was split off the line 25 times. Eric Ebron saw 11 targets, had 2 balls go off of his hands in the end zone. So it was more of a results thing more than a process mistake on Eric Ebron. The argument you can make is that Eric Ebron is simply not that good, and any expanded role doesn't help guys too much who aren't that good, but I still think he fits really well with the way Captain Checkdown Andrew Luck is playing right now.
That's it for the Week 3 edition of Who'd I Miss On with Adam Levitan. Again, you can find Levitan on DK Live and the DK Playbook. We'll catch you next Monday to recap Week 4.
All right, Jessie and Emerson back here with you on the Sweat on your screen, and so are these guys, our NFL panel. Jeff, Reed, Ryan, thanks for not leaving us.
Thank you so much. It's quarterback edition of NFL Hangover. Drew Brees gave his owners nearly 44 points in an OT win against Atlanta. Hits the road to face the Giants. Will he take a step back in the Meadowlands, Reed? Nope. Can't hear you.
Need the audio.
Can you guys hear me?
There we go.
Reed,
3,
hi.
2,
There we
1.
go.
Take 2.
It's the jet lag. No, this is like, I was gonna say this is like Emerson potentially wanting shots, but instead of drinking water, where you think you want to party a little bit more, but it's not going to be as bad of a hangover. Look, this guy is number 4 in terms of fantasy production, DK fantasy points, and 2 of the top 3 guys are his teammates, in Kamara and Michael Thomas. So he has production. He's getting his guys production. But when you look at the Giants, they've held Bortles and Dak Prescott to 14 points. Doesn't really, say much because those quarterbacks that we talked about, not that good. But Watson at, 29 DK points. So I don't think this game goes as high. Look at the 5 quarters that we saw these two teams play with Brees and Atlanta. It did obviously give us more production. But Brees, look, there's 2 guys over 35 in the top 10 in terms of DK fantasy points. One of them is Drew Brees. So I do think he keeps this up, but maybe not this week.
Get this man a water.
Reed has experienced that before.
Jeff, what do you think? Is Brees going to take a step back in the Meadowlands?
Well, it's pretty hard for him not to take at least a little step back from 43 DraftKings points.
It's a lot.
Come on,
It's
Jeff.
a lot.
Live a little.
It's 43.54,
in the big grand scheme of things or whatever, Drew Brees is leaving the Dome. He's going on the road outdoors to the Meadowlands. Traditionally, this has been a spot where it's been a bit of a letdown spot for Drew Brees throughout his career and the entire Saints offense, right? I mean, they're just not the same team traditionally when they go outdoors. So I'm not saying it's like 100% lock here that we're going to get you're going to get 19 points only from Drew Brees. It's still a 50-point game total. The Giants haven't really been that successful at running the ball, so they're probably going to play a little bit up pace on offense as well. But, overall, look at it. The Giants' defense, pretty solid against the quarterback position. Where they've had troubles against the run. So no Mark Ingram back in this game. You could just see a ton of short passes to Alvin Kamara. I think this is the week to get off Drew Brees, quite frankly, although I haven't really been on him that much. It's obviously not been a great start to the year for me personally, but I think fading him this week is a pretty viable option, to be honest.
Jeff, you can only go up from here. Ryan, what do you think is going to happen with Brees in week 4?
I mean, regression's a funny thing, right? I mean, he could regress and still be awesome. Guys talked about the home road splits a little bit. To be careful with just like the raw numbers with the Giants' pass defense so far. We talked earlier about how Dak has just been hot trash, and Blake Bortles. I mean, they gave up a ton of points last week to Houston. So a ton of weapons for Drew Brees, elite offensive line. Their implied team total is roughly around 27 points. And again, the defense for the Giants, I mean, Eli Apple's banged up and not playing very well. Janoris Jenkins isn't going to stop anybody. They dusted like BW Webb off of the street and put him in the slot. So I think he can regress. He's still not going to have necessarily a 43-point game, but he's priced very favorably still in DraftKings. I think the home road outside narrative might lower his ownership. He wouldn't be my favorite play, but I think tournament exposure to Brees is something you're going to want to do this week for sure.
Hey, Jeff, how about Patrick Mahomes continues to lead a ridiculously talented Chiefs offense here? So what do you expect out of him? He's going to hit the road and head to the Mile High against Denver, and this is going to be a Monday night game, so his first big primetime game.
I wish this game was on the main slate because I feel like people are just going to wouldn't play Patrick Mahomes on the main slate just because it's Denver. Denver hasn't really been that good at defense under Vance Joseph, and they've kind of continued that trend this year too. I mean, they're allowing an over 100-point passer rating to opposing QBs through 3 weeks now. So I think Patrick Mahomes is going to just cut right through this Denver team. I don't care that it's in the thin air. There's nothing that I've seen from Denver that they're still getting some pass rush, sure, but there's nothing that I've seen that say they're going to stop him in his tracks this week. I think the Patrick Mahomes show just keeps going here.
You think the Patrick Mahomes show keeps going, Ryan?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I wish it was on the main slate, but I'm probably going to have some exposure to Thursday to Monday games just so I can get some Patrick Mahomes. I mean, this is not the same Denver secondary that we've seen in the past few years. I mean, Pac-Man Jones is getting snaps on the outside. They've allowed the 7th most yards per attempt so far this season. They're bottom 8 in both completion percentage allowed and pass DVOA. All systems go for Mahomes. I mean, there's nothing stopping these guys. Well, at least it won't be Denver in the thin air. I mean, he made his first start there last year. Didn't do what we were seeing him do this year, but he's obviously got his footing under him, and no reason to expect him to slow down this week.
You going to get any exposure to him, Reed?
Yeah, but I will play like what Jeff did earlier, a little devil's advocate. Like Patrick Mahomes is the best quarterback, DK scoring, whatever have you, PPR, season long. But when you look at what he's doing, the defenses that he's gone up against, Chargers, Steelers, and the Niners, not really strong defenses. Like Denver, like Jeff was saying, doesn't scare you as much. But what we've seen also from Andy Reid's led Chiefs is they always start really, really strong. And then for whatever reason, around week 5, week 6, what have you, they falter off a little bit. So again, this is not a product, or this is not a contingent of Patrick Mahomes. It's just a contingent of, does Andy Reid get too far ahead of himself, trying to make sure the ship keeps on going? These are all variables. Again, these guys are right. Patrick Mahomes is key. We wish he was on the main slate, but just some stats to think about in terms of regressing a tad, but it's not going to be much.
All right, Baker Mayfield will make his first career start this week for Cleveland.
Ooh.
After leading the Browns to a win over the Jets on Thursday. Does he keep rolling against Oakland, Ryan?
Yeah, great spot. I mean, only the Saints and Texans have allowed a higher adjusted yards gained per attempt than the Raiders. Matchup is prime for the picking for Mayfield. Clearly energized that team last week when he came in. He completed 74% of his passes. Surprisingly, Todd Haley was pretty aggressive as a play caller with Tyrod under center. They averaged just a little under 11 air yards per attempt, which was tied for the 4th most per attempt early in the season. Pretty surprising. Obviously, the arm talent that Baker has compared to Tyrod, you wouldn't think that they're going to start to be more conservative. So I think it's a really good spot for him. And I think he's priced really well on DraftKings this week in tournaments.
Reed, what do you think? The Baker Mayfield era, has it begun?
Yeah, I mean, I guess, right, for lack of a better word. Yeah, look at Paul Gunther-led defenses, too. They routinely rank last or second to last in terms of takeaways, and Oakland right now this year is no different, right? Gruden's come out and said, we need to find a pass rusher. Well, guess what? You had one, you let it go. And so how do you get to rookie quarterbacks? Well, you give them pressure, and then you disguise coverages, and that's when they make a mistake, as rookie quarterbacks do. So again, Baker is a ship. It's a tide that's rising all ships. And you look at Jarvis Landry too. Oakland is 4th best or 3rd best for opposing receivers, giving up a ton of DK fantasy points. So that stat could be really nice when you look at Baker and Jarvis. So yeah, absolutely.
What do you think, Jeff? Baker Mayfield, is he going to be coming out hot against Oakland?
I'm not even going to play devil's advocate. I'm going to go the opposite. I'm going to say these guys are underplaying this spot. Baker Mayfield has a ton of potential. Everyone's hot for Patrick Mahomes, but Baker Mayfield has just as much upside, in my opinion. This guy's got a live arm. He was an absolute stud in college, and I think in the right situation, once he gets going with Jarvis Landry and Callaway, I think you're going to see some monster games, and this is a great spot. Oakland already allowing over 300 yards per game, has no pass rush, like Reed just said. I think he explodes this week. I honestly would not be shocked. It does come down a little bit to his head coach, Hugh Jackson, who really knows what kind of system he's going to deploy because he's Hugh Jackson. But if he lets him go, I think this is a monster spot for Baker Mayfield, in my opinion.
The future is now, Jeff. Thank you,
Baker
guys.
coin. We're going to the moon, baby.
Wake and bake. Let's go.
All right, we'll get your Monday night showdown picks coming up. But right now, here is a quick preview of what to expect when the Steelers face Tampa Bay in less than 2 hours from now.
Time for your DraftKings Fantasy Flash. I'm Brendan Glasheen. Showdown Captain Contest, Monday Night Football Edition. The winless Steelers head to Fitzmagic-land in Tampa to wrap up Week 3. Player to watch? Duh. It's Ryan Fitzpatrick, $10,800 as a flex play, and he's $16,200 as your captain, which remember gets you 1.5 times more fantasy points. Fitzpatrick looks to add to his Cinderella story this season by not only beating a desperate Pittsburgh team, but also firmly solidify he's the Bucs starting quarterback beyond Week 3. Not Jameis Winston, who according to Adam Schefter Monday morning, privately predicted to team officials Fitzpatrick would, quote, light it up, end quote, during his 3-game suspension. So Jameis isn't all that surprised. The veteran journeyman Fitzpatrick has had great success in his place. Even with the loss tonight, I think most would agree Fitzpatrick has done more than enough to be the starter in Week 4. Then again, folks, there's a narrative to jump on this evening. Fitzmagic has been doubted and moved on from his entire career. He aims to quiet the doubters once again and extend his title as starting QB for a few weeks longer.
Guess who's back? Back
again. Tell a friend.
I was seriously, I had a whole song planned out, and you jumped the stinking gun. Well, forget it. I'll save it for tomorrow.
Sorry.
Adam Anguta is here with his friend, Greg. Let's do this thing we like to call Tears of Joy.
Picking from the top options at a few different levels of the DraftKings Tiers contest. Adam, Tier 3, who's your guy here?
I'm going to go with Javi Baez here. I mean, I got a man crush on this guy, and he seems to crush Jameson Taillon here. So for me, he's my guy. No question about it. Think about these numbers. In his career against Taillon, 10 for 16, 625 batting average, 2 homers, 5 RBIs, 6 extra base hits. Enough said. I don't want to go anywhere else but Baez tonight.
Enough said. I like it. Greg, Tier 3, who are you going with?
Well, first, could you guys practice your synchronized singing more during the breaks?
Dude, most of the time,
I'm sorry. We were like 3, 2, 1.
Yeah, we're a little off today. We're a little off.
I'm sorry. Tier 3.
All right. Well, for me in this tier, I'm going to go with David Dahl. I really want as much exposure to this Colorado offense as possible. 5.9 projected runs for the night. By far the highest on the slate. Obviously, Coors Field, huge for hitters. And if you look at Dahl, all of his successes come at home. 206 batting average on the road, 325 at home. And he's done really well against right-handed pitching this year with 112 WRC+. So I'm going to go with David Dahl here.
Greg, take a trip down to Tier 4 with me, buddy. Who tickles your fancy?
Ooh. I'm going to go with Nolan Arenado here. Tier 4 kind of just seems way too low for Arenado. We talked about him earlier as being one of the highest priced hitters on the slate. So it's a little weird to me that we'd have somebody who's super expensive in terms of the regular DraftKings pricing, and then all the way down at Tier 4 for the tiers pricing. So Nolan just kind of screams value from this spot. You look at him at home, 42 of his 71 extra base hits have come at Colorado. And then also, it's just like I said before, 5.9 implied runs for the night. So give me more Rockies exposure.
All right, Adam, who do you have a man crush in, or on rather, in Tier 4?
Love my man, Mr. Benintendi up in Boston.
Oh, yeah.
You got to take into account, the hope that he's going to play 9 innings tonight. The Red Sox obviously have nothing to play for. I am concerned, although we talked about Arenado before, about him at home, not at home, but just in general, 50 points lower batting average in the second half. But Benintendi has hit Bundy well in his career, 308 batting average, 400 on base percentage. He's taken him deep once. That Orioles bullpen is terrible, so if they can get into that bullpen early, that just means more at-bats for Benintendi against that bullpen. And some of the other guys in this tier, I don't trust any of the Yankees right now. Stanton's been in a major slump. Judge coming back from the injury. Is Tyler O'Neill going to get all those at-bats tonight? So for me, Benintendi's a pretty safe play. I'd roll with him tonight.
Is he pretty safe in your opinion, Greg, Benintendi?
No, not really. I'm going to go with Edwin Encarnacion here. He is who tickles my fancy in this tier. So look at Encarnacion. Maybe a lot of people might think like, he's going up against a right-hand pitcher, so I don't really want exposure to him. But Encarnacion's been a reverse splits guy this year. He has a 100 WRC plus against left-hand pitching, but 119 WRC plus against righties. So better against righties than lefties. And there's a lot of home run upside here for Encarnacion. Over 30 home runs this year, 7 consecutive season with over 30 homers. So that's where we get a lot of our DraftKings points from. Give me Encarnacion.
Wow, Greg kind of jumping the gun already into Tier 5. So Adam, who are you taking from Tier 5?
I'm actually going to take Matt Carpenter. I passed on him, I believe, last week, and it kind of blew up on my face, so I'm going to go back to him tonight. He's also 3 for 8 in his career against Dan Jennings, the pitcher tonight. I'm actually concerned about a lot of these guys that are in this tier, and Encarnacion being one of them. He's only 1 for 11 in his career against Covey, the guy pitching tonight. Springer and Altuve haven't had success against Marco Estrada, despite him basically serving up batting practice this season. And Josh Donaldson's only 0 for 2 in a small sample size. So for me, Carpenter's still playing for the most out of anyone in this slate. The Astros have obviously clinched, and Encarnacion and the Indians are basically clinched. Maybe they get pulled out early. Donaldson as well. So for me, Carpenter's going to be in there. He's leading off as always. So for me, he's the player tonight.
All right, before you two peace out, let's hit us with your slate-approved pick. So your lock of the night, Greg.
Yeah, I'm going to go with Corey Kluber here. I know that earlier Adam said that he's a little concerned about Kluber potentially coming out of the game early, except this isn't really that much of a concern for me. If you look at last year, they let Kluber regularly throw 7-8 innings down the stretch of last year, and 3 of his last 4 starts, he's gone for 31-plus DK fantasy points. So while the Indians don't have anything to play for, they still kind of seem like they want to throw their starting pitchers out there to get them reps before the playoffs.
Wow, that sounds pretty convincing to me, Greg. What about you, Adam?
I think anytime you could get the 29th highest paid, highest priced player at a position, and these are his last 5 games, you got to do it. 31 points, 22 points, 21 points, 16 points, 16 points. An average of 21.2 points. For me, that's Tommy Pham, the outfielder from the Rays. They're still playing really hard to close out the season. And if you could get him for one of your outfield spots as being the 29th overall, you're going to be able to buy up at other places to get a guy like Kluber or an Arenado. So for me, it's Tommy Pham is the core piece to my puzzle tonight. Hope that works out for everybody else as well.
All right, great job by both of you this evening. We appreciate it. We'll catch you guys back here tomorrow, 6 o'clock Eastern time, like every day. Back for one more go-around now with Jeff, Reed, and Ryan Noonan of the Quant Edge. And we'd love to get some Monday Night Showdown picks from you guys ahead of the Steelers-Bucs game.
Starting with your captain's pick, Jeff. So a player you'll pay 1.5 times the salary for, but in return, you're going to get 1.5 times the points.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think you need to get fancy in this game. There's actually a lot of value plays you can go to. There's, a lot of offensive weapons on both sides. I would pay up for Antonio Brown. People want to maybe not go on him just because of this off the field drama. What usually happens when players demand the ball or get mad because they didn't really see as many targets as they want? The next week they usually make up for it. And Ben knows, that Antonio is his bread and butter right now. And the other part of this is they're playing Tampa, who has one of the worst secondaries in the league. So I think you pay up for Antonio Brown. You might even get lower ownership than you normally would because of this off the field stuff, which doesn't really mean anything to me. This is a great spot for Antonio Brown. That's who I would pay up for.
Oh, captain, my captain. Reed, who are you going with? Nope, we can't hear you.
Reed, audio.
Gosh. All right.
You guys hear me now?
Yeah,
Can you hear me now?
we can hear you now. Good.
Jeez, come on, guys. The back room there.
One trip to Hawaii, comes back, has no idea what he's doing.
Okay, yeah. We can hear you now,
This is
Reed.
ridiculous.
Good. We can hear you now. Good.
Up, and we've lost everyone.
There we go. Stop doing
Well,
that,
I feel like I'm
Reed.
taking crazy pills here.
Stop
No.
doing that, Reed. Okay.
I'm not doing anything. Hands free. No, I'm going to say Ryan Fitzpatrick. I tried to make a Tiger Woods joke earlier when I was muted. Didn't obviously work. Ryan Fitzpatrick is a guy that, I misspoke last segment. He's 16th in terms of DK fantasy points. But still, this guy is 16,200. If you look at that Pittsburgh secondary, not too good, right? This game is going to be high scoring. Jeff mentioned, I think Antonio Brown's a fine play, but where you want to see the most upside, or where you see the most upside, obviously, is in the quarterback position. I think you are going to get depressed ownership with guys like Antonio Brown, but play the hot hand, right? We've been hearing it on in every cylinder, right? Play the hot hand, Ryan Fitzpatrick now. And on top of that, he's welcoming his 7th kid this January. Adam Schefter reported that. So this guy is all over the news. He's trying to go for the most kids in the NFL. I think Rivers has 8. So this guy is all over the news. I think he's a fine play, 16-2. He's going to be my captain.
Ryan Fitzpatrick's a bubble, and he's about to burst.
Oh, how dare you
Just
say
like
that.
Tevin Coleman was your slate-approved pick yesterday.
Wow, that was low.
I
That was
suffered with
low.
you, Jeff. Don't worry.
Jeff, I will let you tell him to shut up if you want to. Just saying.
It's okay.
Okay. We'll save that
sorry,
shut up
Jeff.
for later. Ryan?
Ryan Fitzpatrick might be a bubble that's going to burst. It just is not going to happen against the Steelers.
Oh, no.
Wow.
Jeff might be taking some snaps in the secondary for Pittsburgh tonight. I don't know what they're doing. But, look, we can talk about Fitzmagic and all the things that are, his fluctuations over the course of his career. That team has a lot of weapons. And as of now, he's facing a defense that is just a mash unit. Really have been impacted severely by the loss of Ryan Shazier, both in terms of, pass rush, stopping the run and against the pass. So I'm doubling down on Ryan Fitzpatrick there. I think you can get away with Roethlisberger as well. There's going to be a ton of points, especially through the passing games in this game. So give me Fitzpatrick. He's a little bit cheaper than Roethlisberger.
Who is your value pick, though, tonight, Ryan?
One on each team that jumps out. We haven't had much from Peyton Barber this year, but he's getting 18 touches a game. Really, I talked about Shazier being out, so I think you can run. He's pretty cheap. And James Washington played in 66 of the 80 snaps against the Chiefs. Obviously, I don't expect Pittsburgh to run 80 snaps again tonight. But again, this game is going to be up and down. We know the dynamic passing game that the Steelers have. So I think both of those guys are very much in play. I'll probably lean to the savings a little bit with Washington and his touchdown equity.
Hey, Reed, what about you? Who has value tonight? Who can you dig deep and throw into your lineup?
Yeah, O.J. Howard is a guy that I'm really looking at 5,600. You look at both of these teams, really good for opposing tight ends. O.J. Howard now is really getting a lion's share of those snaps, and he's actually tied with the longest reception, and then obviously got a touchdown after that, with guys like Kenny Stills, Deshaun Jackson at 75 yards. This guy is extremely talented, and what we saw last year was that he's a really good blocker, and therefore just stayed in to protect Winston last year. So we didn't see him on many routes, but he's extremely athletic, has great hands. At 5,600, look, you can even go to, if you want to play contrarian, you can go to the Pittsburgh side as well. I think both have upside, but just with those guys, with Jesse James and Vance McDonald, you just don't know who that guy's going to be. So O.J. Howard, Cameron Brate hasn't seen a catch, I think, for a second straight game. So O.J. Howard at 5,600 would be my value play this week.
Hit us with that value play tonight, Jeff.
I think O.J. Howard's a good upside option for sure. Probably more of a GPP play just because he's still only getting like 3 or 4 targets, but he's got the ability to turn that into like a big play, right? So I think I'd probably rather go up for Godwin if I was going to target a secondary option. Ryan mentioned, the Pittsburgh secondary. I think they are going to get Joe Hayden back tonight, which is a big boost, but Godwin's going to see second or third coverage, right? And he's a very skilled player. So I think Howard, Godwin, both in play. I think I'd just pay up to Godwin. He's going to get a few more targets, and, the big play potential is there with him too.
All right, should people at home consider using a kicker and or defense or both in one of their 6 roster spots? What do you think, Reed?
I mean, both of these defenses are really bad. So, in terms of where I'm going, I mean, if anything, I would probably play Tampa Bay, but extremely not confident in that. If you want to pay up, if you want to get those guys like AB, James Conner in your lineup, someone we haven't mentioned, who's potentially in a good spot as well, then you're going to have to pay down, and getting a defense like Tampa Bay or Chandler Canizero in terms of the kicker, right? Boswell has missed a lot. He's having a lot of trouble in his first couple of games this season. If I were going to attack a defense and a kicker, it'd be on the Tampa Bay side.
Ryan, would you consider using one of these in the 6 roster spots?
It's tough. I mean, obviously points allowed aren't necessarily a huge thing. We're looking at like sacks and turnovers, those explosive plays that could, lead to points on the defensive side. It'd be really hard to muster up a defense. Probably a kicker, but if you can get in the business of predicting, kicker usage in fantasy, there's definitely a niche for you somewhere. But there's a reason that we don't use these on full slates for DraftKings too. It's just kind of an anomaly. But I think, to Reed's point, to fit in some of the pieces we want, I think there's some viability to it, but I'd rather lean kicker than defense, if that makes sense.
If you had to pick a defense, though, which one would you pick? Because those are some of the questions that are coming in on Facebook right now. Just give the people what they want.
Yeah, I mean, give me the home team.
Okay.
They're both pretty terrible as far as an adjusted sack rate standpoint. They're not getting a ton of pressure, but I would lean to the home team. Give me Tampa.
Jeff, can you magically predict which kicker will be used?
I mean, the kicker thing is, I want to take Boswell here. I'm all about Pittsburgh tonight. I mean, I think this is ridiculous. Pittsburgh is the underdogs now just because of 2 weeks we've seen Ryan Fitzpatrick. It's like one of the Super Bowl favorites now. Now they're underdogs against Tampa Bay, a team that was projected for like 5 wins. It's been 2 weeks. I think this is a great spot for the Pittsburgh defense. Yes, they haven't started out well. They are going to most likely get Joe Hayden back tonight. They led the league in sacks last year. They still have 8 sacks on the year. So, yeah, some of their metrics don't look great. I think a lot of that was due to playing Patrick Mahomes last week, who just is making everyone look terrible. Ryan Fitzpatrick is not Patrick Mahomes. He might have played almost as good the first 2 weeks, but I like the Steelers defense tonight as a value play. I would want to like Chris Boswell if he didn't suck so much the first week. I think it's actually a good spot for them to put up a lot of points, but I think Boswell's risky. I like the Pittsburgh defense. I actually really do, especially if Joe Hayden's active.
Hey, Jeff, Wayne German, or maybe it's Wayne Yerman, asking, better low-priced value tonight, Vance McDonald or James Washington?
I think you got to go with Washington. I like Vance McDonald, but, Jesse James has worked himself basically into a timeshare there. I'd go Washington.
Who would you go with on this one, Reed?
I think I might go the tight ends. I mean, I think there's more upside when you look at the receivers, and Washington shelled out in the preseason. But if you look at those tight ends, Vance McDonald is the better catching back, but we've seen Jesse James go 5 receptions, 138 yards, and a touchdown on like 45% of the snaps. I want to say Vance McDonald just because you think that that's a game scheme in terms of attacking Tampa Bay's defense, where they're first in giving up DK points to opposing tight ends. So I would say Vance McDonald. GPP is the only.
Ryan, real quick, Vance McDonald or James Washington?
Definitely James Washington.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Well, wonderful work by all of you. We appreciate it.
Dude, listen.
Good talking,
Listen,
Jessie.
man. She has had.
Wait, let me sound it out. Wonderful work by all of you. I did it. Everybody clap for me.
Yay! Trust me, she's been on the struggle bus all day long.
I'm really tired.
Thanks, guys. Yes, she
so
is.
sorry.
If you saw her cold open, she was literally taking a nap.
I was taking a nap, yeah.
Thanks a lot, guys.
Did
We're
you
gonna
learn anything today?
Yeah, I learned that.
Don't say anything about me.
Okay, never mind. It's not safe for work. All right, we got to go. We'll be back at 6 o'clock Eastern Time again here on Facebook and YouTube page and
On the internet.
wherever else they put us.
Yeah, the internet. We'll see you later.
The internet.